Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting for everyone to get in. I just want to apologize. We've been having some technical difficulties. Brad Med, our host, is having difficulties joining, so hopefully he'll be able to hop on soon. So apologies about that. But in the meantime, we didn't want to keep you waiting. We're going to get started. My name is Nicole. I am from Zinnia, and so I'm just going to be taking Brad's place until he's able to join. So I just want to get started by welcoming our guests today. We have Colleen Risk of Celent, Dror Katzav from Atidot, and Tom LeBleu from Benefit Bank Distributors. Welcome, guys. And if you want, would you be able to just give us a little introduction of yourselves?
Sure, I will go first if you guys don't mind. My name's Colleen Risk. I'm a senior analyst at Celent. I work in the life and annuity division. I've been with Celent for 7 years, and I've been in the life and annuity business for over 30 years and have lots of experience seeing lots of changes over the last 30 years, especially in how data is being used. So very excited to be here today to talk with these panelists about interesting things with data.
Thanks, Colleen. Dror, would you be able to tell us a little about your background?
Yes, thank you, Emma, and thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Dror Katzav. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Atidot. My personal background is Israeli intelligence. I served about 11 years in the Israeli intelligence, building data solutions prior to launching the company. Atidot was founded in 2016 out of Israel, and we moved to the US in 2019, currently based in California. And Atidot is focused on driving higher lifetime value for life insurance customers, figuring out ways to engage with policyholders and consumers post their acquisition to better service them for retention, upsell, cross-sell, and so on and so forth in ways that benefit both the insurance company, the producer, as well as the consumer.
Awesome, thank you. And Tom, would you be able to just give us a little bit of background?
Yep, thanks, Nicole. I'm Tom LeBleu. I am the VP of, the Chief Technology and Risk Officer, I think my old job, at Benefit Bank Distributors and also VIP Insurance. VIP is an old school BGA, and Benefit Bank Distributors sells life and annuities to augment the process, for example, for existing financial advisors and the like within our bank clients. I've been kicking around the industry since the early 90s. I started doing policy admin implementations, probably ran into Colleen and didn't know it at the time, and done the distribution side more recently, previously with EBIX, and now I spent the first year worrying about defensively what to do about our data from a cybersecurity and protection standpoint, and now we're taking a look at how we can improve upon its use both for our behalf and for our benefit and for our clients right now.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we're all really looking forward to the discussion today. I think it's going to be a really interesting one, and you guys all have very interesting different perspectives to bring. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So as we all know, the insurance industry is a very data-heavy industry. We've always used it in a lot of different ways, but as technology is evolving, we've been using it more for growth, for marketing. And so we want to talk a little bit about that today, how we can improve collaboration as an industry, really use data to optimize our business processes and elevate the stakeholder experience across the board. So I guess to kick things off, Colleen, would you be able to set a little bit of context for us where the industry is today in terms of the comfort level with data?
Sure, absolutely. And data is certainly a hot topic now. I think there are lots of reasons for that. One of them is people are realizing now that the ability to actually access data from what I call their data prison and legacy software is becoming more realistic. So people are looking at data as currency. So if you look at it, it improves your operational effectiveness, it improves your relationships with your customers, it improves the relationships with your producers. So in all of those areas, being able to use data in an effective way increases your ability to be operationally effective. If you look at it, it's throughout the entire product life cycle, data is important. If you go starting off with new business, it's important from the standpoint that you can get outside data or evidence, which allows you to do underwriting in a more effective manner. Whether you're doing it as accelerated underwriting, you're doing simplified issue underwriting, or you're using it to drive reflexive questioning for full underwriting. So having the information that you can obtain from a MIB, an MVR, an electronic health record allows you to dig more deeply into the information that you can gather from an electronic application. We'll talk more, I think, later about how we might want to improve the process if you've got a paper application, but really from an electronic standpoint, being able to access all of this outside data and evidence is a huge benefit and improves the time to issue greatly. We've seen excellent improvements of 30% or more. One of the main questions we get asked is, how do we make sure that our data is one source of truth? How do we ensure that we don't have lots of data that is conflicting? And that's one of the challenges with data. But having, I know Dror is going to talk later about how he gets the data out. That will be an important part of it. But being able to clean up your data, being able to have that one source of truth, being able to provide that to your producers is really important as well. And that way the producers have the customer care they need, they can do prospecting, they can have a customer experience that's beneficial both to them and to the customer who's buying the insurance. So we're seeing data being used many places, and lots of conversations are being held today about data.
Awesome, thanks. I think that really sets the scene for us going forward. So something that's really spoken about a lot when we talk about data analytics is the importance of getting the right insights to the right people. So I'm really curious, Dror, would you be able to speak to what that means in the insurance industry, specifically when we talk about insights for insurers versus advisors and distributors?
Yeah, I think part of the maturity that the industry has gone through is the move from talking about data to talking about how to use this data to make business impact and how to make it more actionable. One of the things we experience all the time when we work with different actors in the industry is that there is a lot of misalignment between the carrier, the producer, and the consumer, that they have different types of data that they have access to. For example, the distributor have a lot of data about the consumer and has a relationship about the consumer, but they don't see the bigger picture that the carriers see. For example, the data about what's happening post the sale and through the lifetime of the policy. A lot of what we're focusing on is bridging that with the right insights delivered to the right place. For example, if I know through the data and machine learning that certain policyholder might stop paying premium, might lapse, or might be in a situation where the product is not the best fit for them. This is data derived from what the carriers have and the way we analyze the carrier side of the data, but they don't necessarily have the way to act on this data. So they need to be able to share that with the producer or the GA to be able to act, to reach out to the consumer and actually change the course of the policy. On the same note, those insights are also driven by data about the individual, and the data about the individual obviously is more accurate and more reliable on the distribution side of the house rather than on the carrier side of the house. So by having access to both fronts and having access to the two data streams, you can actually come up with insights that are way more accurate and way more actionable for both parties to understand how the product performs and how to best engage with the consumer to make sure that they're on the right track.
Fantastic.
Right, that's interesting. That's almost an age-old problem there, right? Dror is, for as long as I can remember, reports have been coming out all over the place, and you never really know who looks at them and whether people do anything about them. And it's only actionable data, right, that yields either some sort of campaign or a call or something like that that's of value. And so your platform has a very novel way of identifying things that need to be actionable, but you still have to do something with it.
Thank you for saying that.
That's a really great insight. I just want to say welcome to Brad, and I'm going to hop off, but really great conversation so far, guys. Thank you.
Awesome, Emma. Thank you.
Good job.
And I apologize to everyone for being late. I had some technical difficulties with Zoom, but I'm in now, and again, apologize for that. My name is Brad Med. I'm the CTO for Zinnia. Been with Zinnia about 2 years now, and working on a lot of the things we're talking about right now, which is how do we use data to better create a better experience for our customers and for all the participants that are involved in our insurance space. So again, apologies for being late. We'll just continue with the next question. I'm gonna point to Tom, and I'm gonna talk about how do we use best practices and how do we better engage across the industry to drive our ability to use data more efficiently moving forward. So is best practices part of that? What are the things that lead us to be able to use data?
I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to make prospective recommendations across the industry. That's a little challenging, but I'll tell you, in this new role, I had to look at data in kind of a different way. It's actually a liability from a cybersecurity standpoint. So you have to be very, very careful about what it is you have, who can see it, how you protect it. And so a best practice, I think, is to be clear that your operations are very, that you treat that data as with the level of importance that you should. I think that as you see a lot of these new systems and new sources of data proliferate, you have to be very careful about thinking about what you're doing with them to make sure that you're careful with that. So that was one of the interesting, in my previous jobs, a lot of that stuff had been thought about for me already. So I had to work it within the constraints of what the current platforms were. But as you see new ways that we're handling data and new sources of it, just be sure to be very careful about make sure that it's protected and handled right. And that said, from there, I think Colleen hit on this a little with her term, the single source of truth. What we continually try to do, because we're on a distributor side and we have to engage with our clients, is just make sure that you don't ask the same thing twice. Right. So, e-apps tend to stand on their own island. So do illustrations. So do all these other things. And so, aside from getting insight from it and having the value of data directing your business, if you think about operationally making sure that you get it all into a consistent platform and you don't ask the same things twice, and you make sure that how you're dealing with data makes you easier to do business with. I think that that's absolutely key. So a couple of somewhat unrelated thoughts, but that's right.
Dror, what about you? I know, you spent a lot of time trying to interact with a lot of disparate data sources, right? It's part of insights is how do we be able to leverage data, which means we have to get to the data where it exists. What are the things that makes that easier for you when you're looking to produce, innovative insights?
I think first and foremost, as Tom said, making sure that you keep the privacy, you keep the security of the data and all that. That's a big piece of it, and that's definitely a check the box thing that you have to do before you go into all of the other activities. One thing that we do that makes it way more achievable is by partnering with companies like Zinnia. So we are in the process of building our partnership between Zinnia and Atidot, and a big piece of it is how do you make sure that data that sits behind those platforms becomes more actionable and more relevant to the people in the field. So for example, we're working on integration into Life.io or into Breathe Life to make sure that those capabilities, those data sets become insights and become business actions that either the distributor can do or the head of the product can do or the different business functions within the company can do, and monetize that to make sure they drive either growth or retention or making the right decisions when they address their policyholders.
Awesome. So one of the when we look at how we collect data, one of the challenges I think we all deal with is in many cases the experience starts in a non-digital form. So it starts on paper, and that obviously
or it starts on a golf course if you think about it, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, it could. It starts in a conversation. It starts in a relationship. I totally agree with you, but ultimately, the key is that how do we collect the data in a way that we can use that data more efficiently? Colleen, can you talk a little about, what are the things that we can do around the data collection practices that we use to allow us to use data more efficiently as we move forward?
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And one of the things I hit on, if you've got an electronic application, you have the opportunity to write rules that require certain data to be collected. And, as Tom was saying earlier, that same data can be stored and you don't have to re-enter it multiple times as you would if you were putting it on paper. And I think the key here is we all know that lots of these applications are coming in paper, is to make it as easy as possible for the producers to use any application. And I think one of the things that does that is allowing them to have access to the producer and to their own investigation or research at the same time. So maybe before they go to the producer, they want to check out the application and see the types of information that's on there. But then once they're ready to fill it out, they want to go to the producer. So what we need to do is make those e-applications as intuitive and as easy to fill out as possible, driving whether it's the producer or the consumer that's doing the filling out of that application, providing them a way that they can easily navigate through, see where they are, know what kind of questions that need to be answered. How can they get help? If they start doing it themselves, how can they reach out to somebody to come back to them with answers on what does this mean? How can I move forward? Educating them as they go through the application. So I think the goal is to improve the e-apps to the point that they are intuitive, they're easy to fill out, and then they provide that information that we're looking for that you can store, as well as the ability then to reach out, as we were talking about earlier, and get that evidence that you can use in order to make sure that the information you're gathering is accurate. And I think that's a key as well, is, the underwriting process is so much easier whenever you know that the information that's been filled out has been double checked via the evidence.
Awesome. Anything else to add to that, Tom? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think in an ideal world, the prospective insured doesn't even know that there's an application going on, right? So either you have communicated and collected data in advance of the of reaching out to them, and that, like I said, that might be on the golf course because you talk to them, but it also might be from data sources, DTCC or other existing policy admin systems or the like, where you're not asking them stuff you already know about them. And then in our experience, we have a lot of, for lack of a better term, wholesaler ties or regionals and stuff that are helping our advisors engage with the discussion. In the course of doing that, you're gathering information that then is relevant to the application. So if you can augment that discussion by asking some of the right questions, and then at the end of it, say, oh, I just need a few more things, they don't even really know they've gone through an application. So we're pushing at a platform, and we have, relatively speaking, pretty simple products with an homogeneous set of questions. So this allows for this to a certain degree. But I think an application is almost an anachronism in a certain sense. Obviously it has to be done from a legal standpoint, but the degree that you can minimize what feels like that, the better off you are.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think you've seen in other areas, in other industries where the collection and understanding of the person and the information about that person, they've tried to, around KYC and AML and really know your customer requirements, they've tried to make a lot of those improvements as well. So I'm not asking the same question over and over and over and really using the information that exists out there and then just have the counterparty confirm it. But I think that will make there be a lot less friction in the process if we simplify the data collection, and it should ultimately result in a higher quality data set, right? That's the other challenge, is when you're asking them
a higher quality client interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
one of the things that we do with the data we have access to is actually putting the recommendations in the hand of the advisor. So traditionally, you would go to the advisor and they would advise you based on what they know. Obviously, they trying to make the best advice, but there might be concepts that are not familiar with. There might be structures that are not the best suited to help you with. But if you come up with the right recommendations, you can start presenting things in the form of, people like you, like what you see on Amazon or Spotify or any other platform. How much insurance should people like me purchase? What should I be interested in? And not start the journey from, I don't know, you go on any of the either digital quoting tools or meet an advisor. They will try and come up with something for you. And if it starts from people of your profile should be interested in A, B, C products, then conversion rate increases dramatically.
Yeah, I totally agree. So going down this path, let's talk a little about the regulatory environments and how does the regulatory environment impact some of the decisions that we make or some of the ways that we go about interacting and collecting data. Tom, I'm going to start with you, and then we can go through the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, I mean, the regulatory environment is not going anywhere, obviously. And I look at it kind of threefold. First, from the cybersecurity standpoint, ever since the New York DFS came out, they've prescribed a substantial number of considerations that have to be applied to your data throughout. And I talked a little bit about that before, and that's kind of the sine qua non of whatever you're doing. You have to consider that first. But if you look at how from the DOL, like fiduciary responsibility that folks have to their client has evolved, again, I'm kind of going the distributor side of stuff. All that is some context about what conversations you have, what's a recommendation, and all of that's data that it's important that you capture it in a way that is legally retainable, but is easy to happen, as easy as possible along the way. And so that's a big, I think that, that people have CRMs and the like, but they aren't always there when you need them. And I think that you're going to see an expansion of gathering data throughout the process, be driven in part by your need to do so effectively for the compliance regulations as it relates to that. And then the final part is just when you get to the point where you're doing suitability and review and all that, usually you've gone through and the data has been scrubbed and the app is in good order. And so as I noted, the key is, can you get to that point as painlessly as possible through your sales and engagement process prior to you get there?
Awesome. Colleen, Dror, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that, the other thing you have to make sure of is collecting signatures in order to go out and get evidence if you're doing new business and underwriting, right? You have your HIPAA requirements, having an electronic signature that allows you upfront to collect that information so that as you're filling out that application electronically, you're getting information in that will help you to ask the right questions. I think this goes back to some of the things Tom was saying, not ask questions that aren't relevant, but ask the relevant questions. If you're getting conflicting information, making sure that you can ask that in a different way. So, from a regulatory standpoint, I think it's important when you look at an application to say, let me get that HIPAA signature as soon as I can in the process so that I can go out and start gathering evidence and get that data into my new business.
You have to, from a disclosure standpoint, if you're going to be going out and getting prescription databases and stuff like that. So it's a workflow consideration that allows you, again, making sure that what data you have access to is secured both from a legal and technical and every standpoint.
I'll react from a different perspective. As an engineer by background, when the regulation is good or detailed enough, it's actually good in my perspective, because it makes our life way easier in understanding what you can do or cannot do. And I think part of the change that you see in regulation now around the use of AI and the use of new models and the use of those capabilities for insurance, if they become more and more detailed, it makes our life easier. You understand what the regulators are trying to protect against or to make sure people do or companies do. And as a software developer, as a data scientist, as someone who builds those platforms, you can build the platforms in accordance to this regulation. We find ourselves in bigger challenges where the regulation is more vague. And from our perspective, the work that both New York and California did around privacy made our life easier. Here's the 5 data points you're allowed to use. Here's the 3 data points you're not allowed to use. Great, we'll start from there. In areas where it's like, we don't want you to go into that area, but that area is not well defined and is not well defined, is more challenging in understanding what you can or cannot do, both for us as well as to the insurance companies that try to monetize those solutions. So things like get a HIPAA signature as fast as you can in the process. Great, let's change the journey so it comes earlier in the process. This data is allowed to use, great, we'll use that. This data is not allowed to use, great, we'll not use that. Make it more detailed and more defined, I think would help everybody in this journey to make a journey for the consumer that is more explainable and easier to go through.
Yeah, and I think it creates a more consistent experience too, because with vague requirements, you end up having a lot of interpretation, and that creates a lot of kind of conflict and inability to interoperate within the market. So I think I'm with you. To me, good regulatory rules enable us to work with a solid foundation. So it's I'm a supporter on that as well. So we've talked a little about how data is going to help us transform the experience with the customer. And obviously everything we do is about the customer because they buy the products and the solutions that we bring to the market. How does, in many industries I've worked with, the focus has always been about how do we leverage the relationship that I've established with a customer? How do I create an ongoing engagement? How do I, you could say, harvest that relationship and continue to add value to that consumer on an ongoing basis? How is data going to help us, and how can we use data more efficiently to enable a deeper, a longer term relationship beyond them buying a long-term product? How do we establish a more interactive relationship with that consumer through that relationship so we can continue to find opportunities to add value to them as their life experience changes, as they buy a house or get married or have kids? Obviously their needs may change. How do we use data to help that interaction and ongoing engagement? Dror, let me start with you and then we'll go to the rest of the panelists.
So I'll start with a very specific and niche example, but in the last few months, interest rate has gone up, the market tanked, and I'm sure everybody on this call, went and looked into their stock, portfolio, went and looked into their mortgage portfolio, looked into the real estate portfolio. What was the impact? Who has heard from their insurance company about the impact to the life insurance portfolio?
That's right.
And I think that's where we all need to improve dramatically, because it's another asset class that you're managing. Some for shorter duration, some for longer duration, some in this product, some in those products. But those are being impacted. You mentioned life events, there's market events, there's product events. All of that are impacting your journey with this product. The current experience for most people, beyond the ones with very good advisors, is you buy the product and never hear from the insurance company unless you claim. And that has to change. The only thing you hear from them is that letter in the mail say you owe them money. You're not sure what for that product somebody bought 12 years ago. That's not a good experience. And all other industries move out of this experience to something that is more engaging and communicates better, where you deliver more value and, by the way, also charge more money in certain cases, but you get a completely different experience. And I think that's where we're trying to get to. And the way we use data for this is, going back to my example, interest rate change. Not everybody knows that. Not every policy is impacted. Not everybody cares. I'm talking to my friends, some of them are could highly engage with that intent, and some of them don't care at all. And using the data to know who are the people that are impacted and who are the people that would resonate with them helps you better engage with the right people. Other people might be resonating with a different message, such as a life event, such as this or that. Being able to put them in the right cohorts and then engage with them with the right content and put them on the right track to make the right actions generates more value over time, with better engagement that drives retention and upsell and cross-sell, with the right education so they know what they bought, and so on and so forth. And essentially, this all gets into better service that decreases your sales time, increases your efficiency, and drives better performance for the consumer, as well as the insurance company, as well as the advisor that get to harvest their existing customer base in a completely different way than the way they do it today.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a culture problem in a sense, right? Because everyone's worried about sales and there's a massive amount of general neglect of the book of business. And I'm not saying everybody, but Dror is right. I mean, people tend to move on. And then if you've got distribution organizations that have a lot of turnover that end up with orphan policies and stuff like that, it becomes a bigger problem. But I do think at its base, one of the underlying issues is data, because if you don't know anything about that book and you're not aware of what you should be talking to your in-force clients and what's going on with them and all that, you have no reason really to reach out to them. There's not a lot of activities that occur on these policies. So to the degree that you can augment your understanding of that book with even just a little bit of information, continue to retain the relationship with them, I think that people would substantially improve, at least on the distribution side, on the value of their business.
I'm going to use an example that's a little bit outside of insurance, but it's been really interesting to me. And some of you may have seen the commercials for AARP, where they're starting to get points for buying the right kind of food, for exercising, for discounts. So they're having the interaction younger and younger, because now the baby boomers are aging out. You want to get the Gen X, the millennials. So they're trying to move that downstream. And to me, that's the same thing that we're seeing with the customer experience and some of the applications we have for healthy living that we're seeing come on board in like Life.io, where that you can actually have a daily interaction if they want to. Not only daily, you could have a weekly interaction, but if I go to the gym, I get points. If I go and buy eggplant at the supermarket, or I get a discount if I'm going to buy, fruit. So it knows where I am, just like Waze knows where you are when you're driving. I'm at the grocery store. Let me send some information to you about things that I can, healthy living, coupons for healthy foods, and take it outside of the just payment interaction transaction that you have with life insurance and make it part of your lifestyle. And I think that would be a way in order to get that experience that we're looking for, is more of a lifestyle experience rather than a transactional experience.
And it's great.
Few carrier products go that way. The Vitality product, for example, where they've got wearables and it's actually tied into the pricing and the underwriting process, and that lends itself to a substantial amount of data that carriers never had by virtue of what they put in there.
True.
Yeah, and I think honestly, beyond an opportunity to upsell or cross sell, it also, you have a great opportunity to influence the lives of people, right? Because you're actually influencing them in the right direction. The goal is to in essence make their cost of insurance score better, which ultimately should have a positive impact on their survivability. So I think there's just a lot of great things. I think, the auto industry, the auto insurance has had that impact in safe driving, right? Because they basically make sure that it's clear what's going to cause your insurance to go up and down, and that affects your decisions around how you drive. And I think that's had a significant impact on the safety on the road. So I think we have the opportunity in our space to have a similar impact on people's decisions to improve their lives. So I think we're actually running a bit late. So I'm going to wrap up the discussion period, and we'll give us an opportunity to move to Q&A. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So from Emma, are you gonna work on questions? How's this gonna work?
So anyone who has any questions, please submit them through the Q&A button, which should be down at the bottom of your screen, and then we will address them.
No questions so far, but we'll give people a minute to be able to type them out.
We're so broad in our delivery, we cast the net too wide.
It's crystal clear, yeah. While we're waiting for questions, I'll ask one more question just to fill the time. So, What can we do from a technology perspective to enable more interoperability in the industry? Because ultimately, there's not going to be ever just one solution, right? We need to be kind of have an open mentality on how we interact and how we operate together to enable the customer experiences that we've been talking about. What are the kind of things that we can do from a technology perspective to facilitate a better frictionless experience for everyone? Tom, let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at it. So I look at what I can do within my firm, and we try to just apply some precepts to how we handle our data. Like I said, whenever possible, let's not ask the same thing twice. Let's make sure that we need the data and we mitigate and limit who can see it, and we have a complete handle on the audit trail of that. I would say more, I look at it from an operational standpoint. Eventually, if you handle everything very well and it's accurate and it's where you need it, then it ends up being a lot better engagement with our clients and with their clients as well. So you can look at, I mean, Dror and those guys, I think, look more comprehensively at strategy and how much big data there is out there. But I just try to look within our four walls at how we can improve upon how we think about it and use it, and try to do that with every little project we do, every report we run, and so on and so forth.
Awesome.
I would jump in and just say, from a technology standpoint, making things omni-channel and keeping the data set up so that if I start on my laptop and I go to my phone or I go to a desktop computer, that all of that information retains. So being able to move between devices, I think, is really important.
And if I can expand that point, one of the things we notice is that it's not really offline or online, it's always hybrid, and you always have to kind of jump between these two. So, Tom mentioned you meet at the golf course, then there is an email correspondence, then there is, a text message, then there is another meeting, then there is something else that happens on an e-app, and so on and so forth. This has to be constant handover between online and offline. And for that, you have to have technology. And in addition to that, there's also handover between the distributor and the carrier, or you have to have technology too, because they both see completely different perspectives of the world. So that means that there is still a lot of room to grow from a digital perspective and from a technology perspective, where the end goal is providing better service to consumers and provide better coverage for the people that need that coverage. And through that, our lens is obviously the data. There's a lot of data created that helps you drive better actions and better decisions and deliver better experience.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have a couple questions. Let me start with the first. How to enable culture change so that operations frontline users understand the importance of gathering data of high quality and accuracy?
Hey, Diana, good to hear from you. I assume it's the Diana Small that I know. I know what you're saying, which is most businesses that have been around for a while have had people come and go, and hence the underlying quality of their data is very, let's just say, questionable, right? So some people were committed to being good about capture, others weren't. The data gets old and dated over time. And I don't know, when I was referring to culture change, I was saying when you're a sales-driven culture, you don't deal with that so much because you're just worried about getting the next case placed, but you continue to accrete a big book of business that you haven't thought much about. So what we're trying to do right now is we're taking a look at our clients' data and where are they not doing what they should be doing. For example, do they have MIGAs that have extended beyond the original duration period? And can we do something about that proactively to help our clients reach out, clients being banks and stuff, reach out to the folks that own those policies? So that's a particular case where if we know what we're looking for, we can take a look at the data and then execute an initiative where we try to reach out to the folks and provide a service opportunity for the advisors that in a lot of cases will allow them to re-engage and then lead to another sale. So if you I don't think that you're ever going to get folks just to get data right for the sake of doing it, but if you can seek out instances where you can see some value in it and then make something actionable, like Dror had talked about before, and then have that go downstream, then that in and of itself kind of changes the culture, because now people are looking at the value of what they've already sold on their books and what can we do with it.
And I think that's a great answer, Tom. I would also say you need to make it as easy as possible to gather that data. A lot of people are looking at legacy systems and looking maybe not in one place, but in 3 places in order to see all of the data that actually applies to the person that's on the phone. So the easier we can make it for the front end, I think the more accurate they're going to be, because they're not going to have to spend as much time going through a call. They can get to the information they need. They have a place to store the data that they're collecting and then move on. So I would say the impetus is really not only on the person who's collecting the data, but on the technology they're using to collect that data, to make it that as easy as possible for the person that's talking to the person on the phone.
One of the areas in which we spend a lot of time is especially on doing the technology work so you don't change the culture. So if people are used to get leads in a certain way, they would get the leads in the same way. If people are used to put the data in certain places, we're going to pull the data from those places, because you're right, it's very hard to change people's culture. It takes time, and you can do that when they see results. So for example, we have a strong partnership with Guardian Life. Part of this partnership, we drive those opportunities, either in force or new business, to their distributors. The way the distributors get this, they might not even know we were involved. They might get it through the way they always get it, but those opportunities are better, so they ask for more of those. And they get it the same way they would have gotten anything else. It's just getting placed on their, on their list of opportunities. So from their perspective, they did nothing new. They don't need to understand now digital marketing or data mining or whatever. They don't need to learn anything new. They just need to do the same thing they've done, in the last 20 years, but now with better, more targeted opportunities and more targeted illustrations or more targeted recommendations than what they would have done otherwise. And now that they start getting those opportunities and close more cases and get more commission, you can start saying to them, okay, so those are the type of things that you like getting. Are you interested in joining a program where you actually need to do a little bit more work for this? And they probably going to say yes. Unlike if you start from, you need to do more work and you don't know what a result might be. And by the way, part of the integration with Zinnia and their capabilities is exactly that. Instead of just throwing the recommendation, if you put it in as part of the e-app journey anyway, or if you put it as part of the engagement journey anyway, then those are the things where you do the things that you've always done, just with better data and more insights. And now, obviously, it creates better efficiencies, and that buys you the momentum to do more things later on.
Awesome. So we have one more question. How does data help distribution? Tom, I'm going to go to you since this is your area of specialty. We've covered some of this already, but maybe focused on how does it make distribution more maybe effective and efficient, and ultimately which would allow them to potentially touch a broader number of customers?
That's a very broad question. So if you think of it maybe in 3 steps, there is recognizing the opportunity out there. And sometimes that comes from a referral or for shaking hands, and meeting folks. In a lot of cases, that is it. But you do have data and information in a lot of cases, particularly about your book, or if you're working within a bank or anyone where there's an existing relationship out there where, like, as you pointed out, you've got a KYC form or something. I think Dror's company goes, and they're quite good at looking at policy data, but you can also look at client data. And we work with a lot of our clients to match sales ideas with the profile that they should be reaching out to them. So when they have slow week, they can actually be proactive about it. So that's a combination of looking at reports, filtering on stuff, knowing certain profiles, understanding what you're trying to do. So that's a means of using data to recognize opportunities. If you get to the point where you use that now to engage someone, to the degree that you can use what you know and not ask them again, and make sure that that data then continues throughout the process, that's a very helpful aspect of it. It's really hard to do that. So you kind of, in our experience, we're adding in some pieces at a time depending on carrier and product, but that's the idea behind exchanges and other places where you enter the stuff in once and then you don't have to re-enter it over and over. But I think a lot of what we hit on too is once you've sold something, you now potentially have a lot of value from a lifetime standpoint. I mean, everyone in my experience is like, I'll just sell you this term policy and I'll get back with you in 5 years. But to the degree you can put in processes that enable you easily to retain that relationship and then recognize what's going on out there, possibly through external data, but also possibly through just communications with them where they respond, then I think that to me is the biggest amount of opportunity left on the table with most distributors right now, is being effective in the follow through. And that too should be data driven. And in theory, you should have the starting point for all of that.
Awesome. Dror, anything you want to cover just around lead gen and some of the things that you've seen, how data can help, be more targeted and focused?
Yes, one of the things that we do that we found valuable for distributors is that you leverage the data and you leverage the insights from the in-force to drive better engagement with the customers. So for example, if by looking into the in-force, I know that certain people resonate better with certain themes or certain products, you can start and market on those themes, both through the in-force as well as new business, and drive people through certain journeys that are more accurate. So I gave earlier the example of interest rate, or you Brad, gave an example of a life event. If the people come in through a journey of a life event, it's a much easier engagement for Tom to say, that's the type of need that you have. Those are the type of solutions they can provide, and so on and so forth, where the discussion is way more targeted and way more specific, and makes it more of a buy versus a sell situation, unlike the traditional sell approach that mostly life insurance is being sold through. Because now you came through a journey that resonates with a specific need you have. We know it's something that resonates with you because we see a track record of that from the in-force, and use that to drive more new business. So that's one of the tools that we're using that we find very effective with the distributors we work with.
Awesome. I just add, maybe take it in a little bit of a different direction, how data can help the producers, and that's through a new business process that is tightly coupled with an agent portal, so that you can see what's going on with the cases it's running through its underwriting process. You can see the requirements that are still outstanding. You can see if it's not in good order, what's needed, if it needs a signature. You can see where the underwriter is in the process. So that's another way that data can be very helpful to the producer, make their job easier, make them know when they actually need to take an action versus just sitting back and letting the process take place.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's coming from the outside looking in. I don't know how producers deal with the lack of transparency on a day-to-day basis. So helping to solve that transparency problem would be a huge benefit from an efficiency perspective. Well, listen, I think we are at time. I really wanted to, first of all, thank the panelists for joining and with such a good discussion. I also wanted to thank all the participants that called in to listen in. I really appreciate you joining and participating in this webinar. We are recording this, and we will be sending it out in the coming days, so it will be available. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to info@zinnia.com or to me directly, and my name, brad.med@zinnia.com. But again, thank you everyone for joining. And again, thank you Dror, Tom, and Colleen for joining as well.
Welcome. Thank you.
It was fun.
Thank you.